Donald Trump has officially threatened to impose a 100% tariff on absolutely all Canadian goods. The reason for the escalation was the visit of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to Beijing, during which a preliminary agreement was reached to reduce Canadian tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Donald Trump stated that such actions turn Canada into a transshipment point for Chinese exports seeking to enter the American market, bypassing United States restrictions. Trump's statement has already caused a sharp drop in the Canadian dollar and led to the deepest crisis in relations between Washington and Ottawa. But it should not be forgotten that Canada took this step only after other threats from Donald Trump, including the threat to annex the country. And now China has found a reason to sway United States allies to its side, for example China. China took advantage of the discord that Trump left in the transatlantic alliance, condemning his desire to seize Greenland and trying to win over American allies with promises of reliable trade partnership with China, as if to say, it's not like with the Americans. Let's discuss this topic now. Both the issue of tariffs against Canada and, in general, the global impact of Trump's policies on how China is trying to get its hands on yesterday's allies. I'm Alexi Peachy. Let's explore this topic together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and leave any comment under this episode. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. So, as you already know, Canada has moved closer to China, since their closest ally is the United States. They decided the day before to show Canada with tariffs, and Trump says that Canada should actually become the 51st state of the United States, and Prime Minister Mark Carney should become the governor. The official details of Mark Carney's visit to China, confirmed more than a week ago, show that Ottawa has moved toward mutual reduction of trade barriers with Beijing. Canada agreed to lower import duties on tens of thousands of Chinese electric vehicles, which had previously been subject to a 100% tax in 2024. To synchronize with United States policy, Canada is now ready to accept up to 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles at a rate of 6.1%. In response, China agreed to lower import tariffs on Canadian agricultural products, particularly canola seeds, and to grant Canadian citizens visa-free entry. Overall, Canada, which used to sell its products to the United States, decided to find an alternative market after Trump started a trade war against his neighbor. The China-Canada deal, I stress, is still preliminary, but now Trump characterizes Canada's deal with China as a direct threat to the American economy and an attempt to bypass United States tariff policy through the northern border. And here I'll give the full quote from Donald Trump, in which, by the way, he once again teases Canada, hinting that it's not really a separate country, but the 51st state of the United States, quote. If Governor Mark Carney thinks he can turn Canada into a transshipment point for Chinese goods and products, he is deeply mistaken. China will devour Canada alive, completely absorb it, including the destruction of business, the social structure, and the way of life as a whole. If Canada makes a deal with China, all Canadian goods and products entering the United States will immediately be subject to a 100% customs tariff, quote. But then Trump acted like a child, because the American president officially confirmed that Canada is excluded from the Peace Council, that is, the new structure under Trump's leadership created to resolve global crises. One of the reasons for this decision was Mark Carney's public refusal to support the American Golden Dome project. The missile defense system over Greenland and the Arctic, which the Trump administration considers critically important for the protection of North America. But Carney seems to understand that if the United States takes over Greenland, Canada will end up in a sort of horseshoe, meaning surrounded by the United States of America. But here it's important to understand that each side is playing its own game. There's a kind of alliance. USMCA is a free trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada that came into effect in. It modernizes trade rules, tightens regulations on the automotive industry, and strengthens intellectual property protection and digital trade. If we talk about the main parameters of this USMCA union, they are roughly as follows. A country can sell cars to its neighbors without tariffs. 75% of car parts must be produced in North America, and a significant portion of the work must be done by higher paid personnel. Well, in other words, so that all this car manufacturing doesn't rely on whom? China, obviously. New provisions on the protection of trade secrets, digital services, and financial services were also included, and new labor standards were established. But the most interesting thing is that, according to the USMCA agreement, the United States gained broader access to the dairy, poultry, and egg markets, and to agricultural products in general. Suddenly, Canada shifts its agriculture focus to China. And now, the most interesting thing is that in 2026, a scheduled review of the USMCA agreement is supposed to take place. A 100% tariff would be disastrous for Canada's economy, since over 75% of its exports go to the United States. Canada's oil sector, automotive industry, and lumber processing are fully integrated into American supply chains, and at the moment, the Canadian government has not yet given an official response to Trump's ultimatum. However, Mark Carney, speaking in Quebec just the other day, stated that Canada intends to pursue an independent trade policy in the interest of its own producers. And overall, Carney kind of said in Davos that, well, there is a way to choose between America and Canada, and there is also a way for those countries that are in between them to build their own trade networks and alliances, moving independently, not caught between America and China, but choosing their own path. But in this situation, it's time for Trump to come to his senses too, because he's also getting carried away. China took advantage of the discord left by President Donald Trump in the transatlantic alliance, condemning his attempt to seize Greenland and trying to lure American allies with promises of reliable trade partnerships. Since Trump is using tariffs very aggressively and at one point even threatened to take Greenland by force from Denmark, a longtime ally, Beijing decided to try to take advantage of this moment. This week, Vice Premier of the State Council of China, He Lifeng, gave a speech at the Economic Forum in Davos in which he condemned the rise of unilateralism and protectionism, while at the same time portraying China as a benefit for the whole world. I'll share a short but meaningful quote from him next. China is a trading partner, not a competitor for other countries. China's development is an opportunity, not a threat to the world economy. And here it's obvious that China sees the rift in transatlantic relations as an opportunity. China hopes to improve its relations with key trading partners to gain tangible benefits, such as reducing tariffs on electric vehicles. With Canada, this has nearly succeeded, but it's important to note that Canada isn't the only one looking to China. Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom will travel to Beijing at the end of this month, shortly after the approval of the construction of a new large Chinese embassy in London eased a point of tension between the two countries. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is also expected to visit China next month, and French President Emmanuel Macron already visited China at the beginning of December last year. In other words, Europeans are testing the waters in China while Trump lashes out at allies, and in addition, China took a jab at Donald Trump, stating that the United States is now, quote, a purely extractive superpower. And now I'll quote the Xinhua news agency. This is a state media outlet in China, quote, "The world map is no longer a political scheme of alliances and sovereignties, but a crude list of assets. A country's status as an ally, rival, or neutral party doesn't matter compared to the fundamental question of its usefulness." This message has already resonated with developing countries, as Trump says he needs Greenland for national defense and mineral extraction. That's why China is now actively trying to take advantage of the chaos created by Donald Trump. So for now, I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye all.